The void of space was silent, a black ocean without end. In that ocean, a small research ship drifted slowly, its sensors awake, searching for signals. The crew had been traveling for weeks, scanning for ruins, lost ships, or anything unusual. Most days were boring, filled with routine checks and empty readings. But then something changed. A weak signal appeared, faint and broken, carried through static. At first, they thought it was only background noise, nothing more than the universe whispering. But as the ship's computer filtered the sound, the crew froze. The words inside the static were not alien, not unknown. They were human. "Do not enter. We are already here," the voice said over and over, like a warning from the grave. The crew looked at one another in silence, hearts beating faster. No human colony was supposed to exist this far away. The nearest settlement was light years behind them. Yet here was a human voice echoing from the edge of a dead star system. The captain leaned forward, eyes fixed on the holographic map. "Trace the signal," he ordered, his voice calm but sharp. The computer plotted a course, and slowly, the shape of a massive object appeared. It was a ship, drifting alone in the dark. The scanners showed a hull larger than anything they had ever seen. It was scarred, melted in places, and burned as if it had survived battles beyond imagination. Though, crew whispered among themselves. Some wanted to leave immediately, to turn back before it was too late. Others felt drawn to the mystery, the chance of discovering something ancient, something powerful. The captain decided for them. "Prepare for docking," he said, and no one argued. As they approached, the full scale of the ship revealed itself. It was colossal, a giant of steel and shadow. Alien ships lay broken around it, crushed and torn apart as if they had been toys. The black star nearby gave no light, only a faint red glow. And in that glow, the ghost ship looked alive, watching, waiting. The docking clamps connected with a deep echo that shook their smaller vessel. The airlock hissed, the doors groaned, and cold air rushed in. The crew stepped inside, their footsteps ringing against metal floors. The ship was not dead, not fully. Gravity still held them down, and the lights flickered faintly. It was as if the ship itself did not want to be forgotten. The corridors were long and wide, made for giants or for warriors. The walls were covered with strange carvings, images of humans fighting against beasts. With claws like swords and teeth like blades, scenes of fire, blood, and endless struggle. It was not art, it was history. The crew realized with a chill, this was a record of survival. Every corner carried the smell of rust and ash. The silence pressed on their ears, heavier than the gravity itself. But sometimes, the silence broke. A whisper, a faint echo, the same human voice repeating through hidden speakers. "Do not enter. We are already here." The youngest crew member shivered. "It feels like the ship is alive," she said. And deep inside, in the captain's heart, a question grew heavy. What kind of humans had built this place? And why had they left such a warning behind? The deeper they walked, the stronger the signal became. It was guiding them, leading them into the heart of the ship. The crew could not escape the feeling that they were being watched. Not by machines, not by ghosts, but by something older, stronger, something waiting for them in the dark. The captain whispered to himself, though his voice trembled. "This is not discovery," he said. "This is a grave." The corridor stretched endlessly before them, wide and silent. The air was cold, stale, carrying the taste of metal and smoke. Every step of the explorers echoed through the ancient ship, like whispers in a tomb. The lights above flickered weakly, as if the ship itself struggled to stay awake. The captain led the way, his hand tight around his scanner. The device beeped softly, detecting power still running deep inside the walls. This ship was not dead, not completely. Something inside was still alive, holding on after centuries. That truth made the crew uneasy. Machines should not survive this long. Yet here they were, surrounded by them. They passed door after door, most sealed shut with heavy metal plates. But in one corridor, a massive doorway stood open, the gate twisted as if torn apart by claws. They stepped inside cautiously, and the beam of their lights revealed a great hall. The walls were covered in dark burns, scorch marks from battles fought inside the ship itself. In the center of the hall lay broken armor, old and heavy. The style was unmistakable. It had been built for humans. The alien members of the crew froze in fear. They had heard legends of Deathworld 15, a place said to be unlivable, a place where even the strongest species in the galaxy could not last a single night. But humans had lived there, fought there, and escaped from it. Now proof was right before their eyes, armor built for humans, still carrying scratches from beasts that no alien dared imagine. The youngest explorer bent down and brushed dust off. The metal, the armor was huge, thick, heavier than anything she had ever seen. It looked more like a cage than clothing, but it was clear. Someone had once worn it. Inside the helmet, the glass was cracked, and for a moment she thought she saw eyes looking back at her. She screamed, stepping back. But when the captain shone his light, it was empty. Only shadows, only tricks of the mind. From the corner of the hall, a sound rose low and broken. A speaker in the wall crackled alive. The same voice as before filled the chamber. "Do not enter. We are already here." The sound bounced off the walls, twisting and echoing. This time the words felt closer, sharper, as if they were not from the past but from right now. The crew argued in whispers. One alien officer wanted to leave immediately, fearing a trap. Another wanted to continue, curious about what secrets lay deeper inside. The captain silenced them with a single command. "We came this far, we finish what we started." But even his voice carried doubt, his eyes searching the shadows nervously. At the far end of the hall stood another door, wide and tall. It was half open, groaning against its old hinges. Beyond it was darkness so thick even their light seemed to sink into it. The captain stepped forward and the door scraped wider, releasing a gust of air like a sigh. Inside, the crew found a chamber lined with carvings, strange alien symbols mixed with human figures. The murals told a story of endless war, humans standing against monsters with claws, wings, and fangs. The images showed fire raining from the skies, beasts falling before human weapons, and at the bottom of the wall, one phrase written in human script: "Only the strong endure." The explorers stared in silence. Some felt awe, others felt terror. To them, humans had always been an ordinary race, young and small compared to the ancient powers of the galaxy. But here was evidence that humans had faced horrors no other. Species had survived, and not only had they survived, they had won. Suddenly, the floor trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. The ship groaned like a living creature waking from a long sleep. The lights flickered brighter for a moment, then dimmed again. The crew froze in place, their hearts racing. It was clear now. This ship was not just a ruin. It was waiting. The captain raised his scanner, watching as new signals began to appear on the screen. Deep inside the ship, something was moving. Something old, something powerful. And for the first time, even the captain wished they had never found this place. The explorers stood in silence, their lights trembling against the ancient walls. The murals had told a story, but not the full one. Something deeper was hidden here, and the ship wanted them to see it. The captain motioned forward, and they pressed deeper into the belly of the giant vessel. The corridors twisted like veins, wide enough for tanks to drive through. Every step felt heavier, as if the ship itself was watching them. The youngest explorer whispered, "Why does it feel alive?" No one answered, because each of them felt the same weight pressing on their chest. Finally, they reached a massive chamber, its doors taller than a mountain wall. The gates slid open slowly, screeching like beasts in pain. Inside was a room unlike any they had seen before. The walls were lined with holographic projectors, still working after centuries. When the captain touched the console, the chamber lit up with images. Planets appeared in the air, spinning slowly in blue light, but one stood out glowing red, covered with storms and fire. It was labeled in a human script the crew could barely read. The words appeared again and again. Class 15. Deathworld. The alien officer gasped, his claws clenching. Every species in the galaxy knew what that meant. A Class 15. Deathworld was not a planet. It was a nightmare. A place where the ground itself tried to kill you. A place where the animals were faster, stronger, hungrier than anything in the stars. No species had ever survived on such a world. Yet here was proof humans had called it home. The holograms shifted, showing forests filled with predators, each larger than a ship, creatures with jaws wide enough to swallow a tank, wings strong enough to block the sun, storms of fire, oceans filled with venom, skies raining lightning without pause. And through it all, figures of humans appeared, small but unbroken. They hunted, they fought, they built, they stood against horrors that no other race would dare to face. The crew's hearts pounded as they watched. For the first time, they understood why alien legends had spoken of humans as demons. It was not myth, it was truth. To survive a Class 15. Deathworld was not living, it was conquering hell itself. One by one, logs began to play, voices of humans recorded centuries ago. A woman's voice, calm but firm. We adapt, we endure, no matter the cost. A man's voice, ragged with pain. The beasts come every night, but we will not die. A child's voice, frightened but steady. Will they come back tomorrow? And then silence. A silence so deep that it made the explorers shiver. The captain swallowed hard, his voice heavy. These people did not just survive, they became stronger than anything we know. The alien officer shook his head, his voice cracking. No species should live in such a place, it is against nature. But the evidence stood before them. Undeniable. Humans had done the impossible, and they had left this ship as proof. The youngest explorer touched one of the glowing holograms. Her eyes widened as she realized the truth. These weapons we found earlier, they weren't made for war against aliens. She whispered. They were made to fight this. She pointed to the Deathworld. The realization struck them all like fire. Every weapon, every armor, every invention on this ship was not for conquest. It was for survival. The holograms shifted, again showing not just beasts but fleets, alien fleets descending upon Deathworld 15, thinking humans weak. The recordings showed the same result each time. Humans fought back, humans endured. The alien fleets burned in the skies, leaving behind wreckage like the one floating outside. The ship trembled again, and the holograms faded. The crew stood in the dark chamber, shaken to their core. They had learned the truth. Humans had come from a world where death ruled every second, and because of that they were unlike any other species in the galaxy. The captain finally spoke, his voice low and grim. This is not only history, this is a warning. The youngest explorer whispered, almost to herself. If humans could survive there, then what else can they survive? The chamber lights flickered once more and the warning voice returned. Do not enter. We are already here. This time, the words felt less like a ghost and more like a promise. The chamber was silent after the holograms faded. The crew stood frozen, the words echoing inside their heads. Humans had survived a Class 15 Deathworld, something no other species could even dream of. But survival was only part of the story, and the ship wanted them to hear more. The captain stepped forward and touched the old console again. This time, instead of maps and holograms, voices filled the room. They were human voices, not ghostly whispers, but clear recordings of men, women, and even children. The crew felt a chill as the sound of life from centuries ago washed over them. The first voice was that of a man, calm and commanding. This is Captain Elias Ward of the Vanguard, the voice said. If you find this message, then know we came from Deathworld 15 and we endured what no one else could. The captain of the explorers stiffened, his eyes narrowing. A human ship with a human captain leaving messages in the dark. The galaxy had erased this story, but here it lived on. Another voice followed, soft and tired, belonging to a woman. They told us to surrender. They told us to leave our world, but we did not, she said. They called us mad, they called us cursed, but we are still here. The explorers shifted uncomfortably. The alien officer hissed under his breath. To him, this sounded less like survival and more like defiance. A dangerous kind of strength, the kind that frightened empires. Then came a child's voice, shaky, frightened but determined. "Will the monsters come back tomorrow?" the child asked. A man's voice answered in the recording, gentle but hard. "Yes, they will, but so will we." The crew shivered, not because of the words, but because of the courage hidden inside them. A child growing up under fire, never knowing peace, yet never breaking. The youngest explorer covered her mouth with her hand, tears in her eyes. "It's like they never stopped fighting," she whispered. The captain nodded slowly, his voice grim. For them, fighting was life. As the recordings played on, the crew began to notice something deeper. The voices were not only of warriors, but of teachers, healers, and builders. They spoke of forging cities from stone and steel, of turning poison into medicine, storms into power. They spoke of planting crops in soil that tried to kill them, of finding beauty even in fire and ash. Humanity had not only survived Deathworld 15, they had created life within it. The alien officer shook his head in disbelief, his voice sharp. "No species should be able to do this. This is not natural." The captain looked at him and said quietly, "No, it is something greater." More recordings played, fragments of arguments, plans, and warnings. One log stood out, the voice of Captain Elias again. "If you hear this, understand what we became," he said. "We are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the largest, but we endure. We fight not because we want to, but because we must, and that is why we win." The words echoed through the chamber, heavy and unshakable. The explorers listened in silence, but inside each of them a storm was growing. If humans had endured such horrors, what would they become? If they spread through the stars, would they be saviors or conquerors? Would they build peace or bring endless war? The youngest explorer leaned against the wall, her voice almost a whisper. "They sound like us, but they're not like us at all." The captain clenched his fist, staring into the darkness ahead. "They are more than us, and that is what makes them dangerous." Suddenly, the lights flickered and the recording stopped. The console powered down with a hiss, leaving only silence. But the crew could still hear the voices in their minds. The echoes of humanity, defiant, unbroken, eternal. The ship groaned again, as if it had given them just enough to keep them moving forward. The captain turned, his eyes cold, his voice firm. "We keep going. There's more to this story, and I need to know how it ends." The crew followed, each step echoing like a drumbeat of fear and awe. They had heard the voices of the past, and now they feared the future, because somewhere in the dark humanity's shadow was still waiting. The crew moved deeper into the heart of the ship, their lights cutting through the thick shadows. Each hallway they passed seemed heavier than the last, as if the ship itself resisted their steps. Then, without warning, their scanners flared with readings, dense metals, stored energy, and sealed chambers. The captain knew instantly what it meant. They had found the armory. The door was enormous, thicker than any vault they had ever seen. Layers of steel and strange alloys fused together, scarred, with burn marks and claw scratches. It was a door built not to keep people out, but to keep something terrible in. The alien officer hissed nervously, his voice low. "No weapon should ever be locked away like this." But the captain only placed his hand on the panel, forcing it open. The door groaned, metal grinding against metal. A cold gust of air rushed out, carrying the scent of oil and dust. Inside was a cavernous hall, lined from floor to ceiling with racks of weapons. Even in the faint light, the sheer scale was overwhelming. Blades, rifles, cannons, and devices no one could name rested. In silence, the explorers stepped cautiously inside, their boots ringing against the steel floor. The youngest gasped as she picked up a weapon from the nearest rack. It was heavy, too heavy for her arms, yet perfectly balanced. The weapon hummed softly, as though alive. She pressed a switch and a blade of pure energy extended from the barrel. The glow painted her face in pale blue light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Another crew member tested a different device, a small sphere with ridges. When he touched it, the sphere pulsed, then projected a sharp energy field that cut straight into the floor. He dropped it instantly, fear flashing in his eyes. "This is not a weapon. "It is destruction in your hand," he whispered. The alien officer stepped back, refusing to touch anything. "These are not tools of war. These are nightmares made solid," he growled. But the captain studied the racks with sharp eyes. "These were not made to conquer," he said slowly. "They were made to survive." As they walked further, they found armor suits standing upright like silent guardians. Each was massive, built for human frames but thicker than starship plating. The helmets had narrow slits. The chest plates bore scars from claws, fangs, and fire. One suit still carried dried blood across the visor. The explorers stared at it, chilled by the thought of the warrior who once wore it. In the far corner of the hall, a massive console flickered to life as they approached. Holograms appeared, showing humans in these very armors they fought against towering beasts with jaws wider than ships. Each swing of their glowing blades cut monsters in half. Each blast of their rifles tore through armored hides. The crew could only watch in awe, realizing these weapons were not exaggerations, they were truth. The youngest explorer whispered, her voice shaking, "These were made to kill gods." The captain did not answer, his jaw tight. He could see the fear in his crew's eyes, and he shared it. Because if humans needed such weapons only to survive, then what kind of world had shaped them? The armory trembled suddenly, the racks rattling, the weapons humming. A faint voice played through the hall, distorted but clear enough. "You hold our legacy, but not our purpose." The crew froze, scanning the walls, searching for the source. The voice continued, heavy and final. "These weapons were never meant for you." Silence followed, broken only by the low hum of the energy blades and rifles. The crew slowly backed away, realizing the danger of their discovery. If these weapons fell into the wrong hands, no empire could stop their destruction. The captain's heart pounded as he turned to his crew. "We leave nothing behind, but we also take nothing," he ordered. No one argued, because they all understood as. They stepped out of the armory. The heavy door closed behind them. The sound was like a coffin sealing shut. The explorers carried no weapons in their hands, but the weight of what they had seen pressed on their souls. The youngest whispered, as they walked back into the dark corridor, "If this was only their armory, then what else waits for us on this ship?" The ship groaned again, as if it agreed with her, and the darkness ahead seemed to open wider, waiting for them. The corridor beyond the armory stretched into silence, long and endless. The crew walked carefully, their footsteps loud against the steel floor. Every sound felt too sharp, as though the ship itself was listening, and then they saw it. The first true sign that battles had been fought here. The walls were burned and twisted, scorched black as if firestorms had raged inside. Deep claw marks, cut through the metal, long gouges that no tool could have made. It looked less like a ship and more like a hunting ground. The youngest explorer whispered, "Something lived here. Something big." Her voice trembled, and nobody disagreed. They entered a chamber where the lights flickered weakly. The smell of rust and ash hung heavy in the air. At first, the room seemed empty, but then their beams revealed the floor. Bones lay scattered everywhere. Some were human, armored and broken. Others were alien, with twisted jaws and claws sharper than knives. It was not a grave. It was a battlefield frozen in time. The alien officer knelt near one of the skeletons, running his claw gently along its surface. "These bones are not from any species we know," he whispered. "They are predators, built for killing, and yet they are dead." The crew realized what that meant. Humans had faced these monsters and won. The captain's face was grim as he examined the scene. The humans had not only fought beasts from their homeworld, but had carried that war into space. The battle inside this ship had been desperate, brutal. The walls bore laser burns, the ceilings carried marks of explosions. This was no ordinary fight. This was survival at its most extreme. As they moved deeper, they found another sign of the battle, a massive hole torn straight through a bulkhead, as if something had ripped its way in. Bloodstains stretched across the walls, long dried but still dark. The youngest explorer pressed her hand to the wall. "This ship isn't just a relic," she whispered. "It's a tomb." The silence pressed on them again, heavy and thick, but then without warning, the console nearby flickered to life. The crew jumped as the hologram appeared, showing fragments of the battle. Humans in heavy armor fighting side by side, blades of light slashing through monstrous beasts, rifles tearing through alien hides. Explosions shook the halls, the ship groaning under the force of war. The recording ended as suddenly as it began, leaving only the sound of the crew's breathing. The alien officer snarled softly, "They fought as if they were born for it." The captain answered quietly, "They were, their world shaped them for this." Deeper in the wreck, the explorers found another horror, a massive creature's skeleton, pinned against the wall by 3 human spears. Its skull was longer than a man, its teeth jagged and curved. The bones of its claws were as long as swords. The youngest whispered, "They killed this with their hands," and for the first time, she felt not only fear, but admiration. The ship rumbled suddenly, dust falling from the ceiling. The captain's scanner beeped wildly, showing energy spikes. Something deep in the ship was waking. The youngest stepped back, her voice shaking. "What if we're not alone here?" The silence that followed was worse than any sound. The captain slowly raised his weapon, not to use, but as a shield against his own fear. The air felt heavier, colder, as if the ship itself remembered the battles and wanted to play them again. The alien officer hissed, "This place should have been left to rot." But the captain shook his head, his voice low. "No, this place is a message." They walked further, passing halls littered with broken weapons, shattered armor, and burned banners. Each relic told the same story: endless war, endless survival. And though the humans were long gone, their struggle lived on in every scar. The crew finally reached a vast hangar, its roof torn open to the stars. Inside were wrecked fighters, human craft burned and broken. But alongside them were alien ships. Torn apart, ripped to pieces, the explorers stared in shock. The humans had not just fought beasts, they had fought empires. The youngest whispered softly, almost afraid to breathe. If they survived this, then what stopped them? The captain said nothing because he already feared the answer. Maybe nothing had stopped humanity. Maybe they had only moved on. The ship groaned again, louder this time, as if it agreed with their fears, and in the shadows of the hangar, something flickered, not light, not sound, but movement. The explorers froze, realizing the signs of battle were not only memories. Something still remained, watching them from the dark. The hangar was silent except for the faint hum of old machines. The explorers stood frozen, staring into the shadows where something had moved. But when their lights cut across the far wall, nothing was there, only broken ships and shattered steel. The captain's scanner beeped again, sharper now. The reading showed faint energy pulses deep below the hangar floor. Not weapons, not engines, but life support. The crew exchanged nervous glances. After centuries, there should have been nothing alive here. And yet the signals were steady, waiting. A hidden staircase led them downward, into a chamber colder than ice. Their breath fogged in front of them, and the walls glistened with frost. The chamber stretched out like a cathedral, vast and echoing. Rows of tall glass pods lined the walls, each glowing faintly with blue light. The explorers stopped dead in their tracks. Inside each pod rested a human. The sight stole the air from their lungs. The humans were not skeletons, not dust. They were preserved asleep, armored like warriors ready for battle. Their faces were calm, their hands clenched around weapons even in rest. The youngest explorer whispered, "They're not dead, they're waiting." Her words sent shivers crawling down every spine. Alien officer hissed, his voice full of panic. "This is wrong. No species should sleep for centuries like this." The captain's face was pale but firm. "This is not sleep, this is preparation," he said. He stepped closer to one of the pods, his reflection staring back at him through the frost. The human inside was massive, scars across his face, his armor dented but intact. Even in slumber, he looked like a predator ready to strike. The console beside the pods flickered to life. An old recording played, a human voice deep and unshaken. "If you are here, then know this is not a tomb," the voice said. "These are guardians, sleeping until they are needed again." The explorers stiffened as the voice continued. "If the enemy rises once more, we will rise with them." The youngest stepped back, shaking her head. "They can't mean they're still alive." The captain didn't answer because the truth was clear in the readings. The life signs were weak but steady. The humans inside the pods were alive. Suddenly the chamber shuddered, the floor vibrating beneath their boots. The pods hummed louder, their lights flickering as though they had sensed movement. One pod hissed softly, frost cracking along its surface. The crew froze, staring at it in horror and awe. Inside, the human's chest moved, a slow, deliberate breath. The alien officer drew his weapon, fear flashing in his eyes. "If they wake, they will destroy us all," he hissed. But the captain raised a hand sharply. "No weapons, not here, not now." His voice trembled even as he said it. He knew if these warriors awakened, nothing they carried would matter. The pod groaned again, steam escaping in long white trails. The glass began to slide open, slow but unstoppable. The crew's hearts thundered in their chests. The youngest whispered, "We should run." But her legs refused to move. None of them could look away. The human inside opened his eyes. They glowed faintly under the chamber's blue light, sharp and unyielding. He stepped out, the weight of his armor shaking the floor. His breath echoed like thunder in the frozen silence. For a long moment, he simply looked at them, studying, judging. The explorers felt like prey under his gaze. Then he spoke, his voice deep, carrying centuries of battle within it. "You should not have come here," he said slowly. His words cut through the silence, like blades. "But now you cannot leave." The ship groaned around them, the pods humming louder. More lights flickered across the chamber as if the others were stirring. The explorers stood frozen between awe and terror, because the awakening had begun, and humanity was not gone. Humanity was only sleeping, waiting for war. The chamber trembled as the human warrior stepped from the pod. The explorers stood frozen, their hearts racing, too afraid to breathe. The man's eyes glowed faintly under the dim blue light, sharp and watchful. But before he could move again, the walls around them came alive. Panels lit up across the chamber, casting long shadows over the frozen rows of pods. A deep hum filled the air, and then a voice echoed through hidden speakers. It was human, but older, heavy with command. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the Vanguard," the voice declared. "If you are hearing this, then we are gone, but our warning remains." The explorers turned, searching for the source, but the voice came from everywhere. Even the awakened warrior lowered his head as if listening to a commander he still served. The voice continued, calm and steady. "We left Deathworld 15 not in conquest but in escape. We carried with us the scars of a world that would not let us live in peace, and we carried the knowledge of an enemy that should never reach the stars." The crew exchanged fearful looks. The alien officer whispered, "Enemy?" His voice rough. The recording answered him as if it had heard. "They followed us." The captain's voice said, "The predators of Deathworld, creatures born of chaos and hunger. They do not stop. They do not fear. They learned from us, as we learned to fight them." Holograms burst into the air, glowing above the pods. The explorers gasped as the images showed monstrous shapes, winged beasts blotting out suns, creatures the size of cities, their claws raking across battlefields, their fangs sinking into armored ships. The recordings showed humans fighting them, thousands against one, and still the monsters returned, endless, relentless. The youngest explorer covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. "How did they survive this?" she whispered. The recording answered, "We endured because we had no choice." Elias Ward said, "On Deathworld 15, we learned the first rule: only those who endure may live. But in leaving, we carried a curse, for the predators would not remain behind." The hologram shifted again, showing alien fleets burning in space. Ships torn apart not by humans but by the beast that had followed them. Entire armadas swallowed in darkness. planets left in ruin. The explorers trembled as the images filled the chamber. These were not myths, not legends. This was truth. The voice grew quieter as if weighed down by centuries. If you have found our ship, then you stand on the edge of the same fire we faced. Know this, we are humanity. We do not surrender, we do not kneel, and we do not die. But if the predators reach you, if they are already here, then your fate is sealed. The chamber shook as the recording ended. The lights flickered, plunging the explorers into momentary darkness. When the glow returned, the awakened warrior still stood before them. His breath echoed through the chamber, steady and strong. His eyes burned with purpose, not rage, not madness, but purpose. The captain of the explorers finally spoke, his voice tight. "What are you?" he asked, almost a whisper. The warrior looked at him, the silence heavier than any answer. Then the man spoke, his voice low and unshakable. "We are what our world made us," he said, "and now your world will face the same trial." Tree, youngest explorer, stepped back, fear twisting inside her chest. "You mean they're coming?" she asked. The warrior nodded slowly. "They never stop," he said, "and when they arrive, you will need us." The pods hummed louder, their lights flickering as though more were about to open. The explorers stood paralyzed, knowing the warning was not history, it was prophecy. The ship groaned again, its massive frame vibrating like a drumbeat. Above them, alarms flickered alive for the first time in centuries. Outside, in the dead silence of space, something stirred. The predators were not just legends, they were close. The alarms echoed through the ancient ship, sharp and piercing. Red lights flickered across the chamber, casting long shadows over the frozen pods. The explorers clutched their weapons, though they knew they would be useless. The human warrior stood still, his armor steaming in the cold air, his eyes fixed on the ceiling above. The captain's scanner screamed with signals, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Shapes were moving outside the ship, fast and organized, circling like predators around prey. The alien officer hissed, his claws curling. "They are here," he said, his voice breaking. No one needed to ask who they were. The recording had already given them the answer. The youngest explorers. Hands shook as she held her light toward the pods. The humans inside remained asleep, but their chambers pulsed faster, responding to the danger. The awakened warrior finally spoke, his voice deep and calm. "They have found us. They never stop hunting." His words fell heavy, filling the explorers with dread. The ship groaned under the weight of something striking its hull. Metal screamed, dust rained from the ceiling, and the floor vibrated beneath their boots. The youngest screamed as another impact thundered across the hangar above. The predators were not just watching, they were trying to break inside. The captain shouted for everyone to move. They followed the warrior down a narrow corridor, their lights trembling against rusted walls. Behind them, the sound of tearing metal echoed as if claws were ripping through the ship itself. The alien officer turned his head once, his voice hollow. "They are breaching. Nothing can stop them." As they ran, the consoles along the walls flickered to life again. Images flashed of the predators, massive forms with too many limbs, glowing eyes that pierced through darkness. Their bodies shifted like shadows given flesh, their movements too fast for their size. The explorers felt sick as the ship itself showed them what was coming. It was not warning them anymore, it was preparing them. The youngest stumbled and fell, her light spinning across the floor. It landed on a corpse pressed against the wall, but it was not human. It was one of the predators, its skeleton twisted and broken. The warrior stopped, staring down at it, his voice low. "They bleed. They can be killed, but only if you are willing to die with them." The captain's heart pounded as the ship shook again. Harder this time. Screeches filled the air, a sound that pierced bone, a sound no living thing should make. The predators were close, and their voices were a storm of hunger. The alien officer covered his ears, snarling. "They want us to hear them. They want us to be afraid." The lights in the corridor flickered out, plunging them into darkness. For a moment, the only glow came from the warrior's armor, faint and steady. Then came the scratching, claws dragging against steel, moving all around them. The predators had entered the ship. The youngest whispered through trembling lips, "Captain, we can't fight. This." The captain swallowed hard, staring at the warrior who walked ahead without fear. "We don't have a choice," he answered, his voice hoarse. Because in the dark, choice no longer mattered, only survival did. The corridor opened into another vast hall. The ceiling was cracked, revealing glimpses of the dead star outside. And in that faint red glow, the explorers finally saw one. A predator stood at the far end, its body hunched, claws scraping the floor, its mouth split wide, lined with endless rows of teeth. Its eyes glowed like coals, fixed on them. The youngest whimpered, her legs frozen. The alien officer raised his weapon, though his hands shook. The predator let out a shriek that shook the walls, and then, from the shadows, more shapes crawled into the hall, dozens of them, maybe more. The explorers realized the truth in that instant. The enemy was not approaching, the enemy was already here. The human warrior stepped forward, his voice low. "Stand behind me," he said, his armor glowing brighter as he raised his weapon. "For what comes now, you are not ready." The predators screamed again, the sound of hunger and hate. The chamber shook, the ship roared, and the hunt began.